house, and if any Indian tries to stop me, I'll blast him.
You know, the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV.
Hey everybody, this is Ian, and this is Native Film Talk. Thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural episode, the first episode kicking off the entire podcast. So first off, what did you think of the intro? I thought it was pretty cool. I put that together with the help of my buddy Sam Goodman, and he is an experienced podcaster. He has multiple podcasts. He helps people with podcasts. So if you listen to it and you're like, man, Ian really knows what he's doing, this sounds great. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know people who know what they're doing, and he helped me put that together along with the outro and really has been my mentor throughout this process. So shout out to Sam real quick. But back to the intro. Did you recognize the two quotes that I used in the intro? The first one, it's from Pocahontas. It's a great scene when they're going, a great scene. It's a terrible scene, but they're on their way to America. And that scene gets brought up when he's talking about to John Smith, what he's going to do when he gets there. And then the second one, if you are a fan of Smoke Signals, you in a heartbeat knew that's what that quote was from. One of my favorite movies of all time, Smoke Signals. And I think if you're Native, that's kind of everybody's favorite movie. If not one of the, it's up there. So thank you all for coming on and listening to Native Film Talk. This is going to be focused around individual movies and the representation of those movies, talking about the representation in the movies, like and the full title of this podcast is Native Film, Natives talking about natives in film. So that's exactly what I plan to do in the realm of documentaries, movies, TV shows, and documentary and animation. Sorry. And I have a list, a pretty big list right now that I kind of just pulled together of about 60 instances of those movies, TV shows, documentaries. And the whole reason I did this, honestly, is there was a void. I went and just one day started scribbling down on my phone. I pulled up the Notes app. I started writing down Native movies that I wanted to watch. I just wanted to watch Native movies. For whatever reason that day, I just started writing them down. And of course, like the most popular ones came to mind. Dances with Wolves, Thunderheart, Smoke Signals, Skins. And then I started getting a little bit deeper with like the Navajo specific films. When I was like, I've never seen Turquoise Rose. I'll watch Turquoise Rose. Edge of America. You know, that's another good one. I'll watch Edge of America. And I'm like, well, then there was Windtalkers too. And then I'm like, well, technically Legends of the Fall is a Native film also. And well, technically Avatar is a Native film too. And then I really started thinking, I'm like, man, there's a bunch of films that are technically Native films. And then I was taken back to after my list kept growing and growing, and I started naming movies or listing movies like Missing, Revenant, Apocalypto, older movies like Billy Jack, Hostels, Little Big Man, even Twilight. As much as it pains me to have to watch those movies, the idea of sitting down and watching it, but it's a popular movie, and I think it's a good idea to watch, so I'll watch it. You know, I'll talk about Jacob and Native representation in Twilight. Magnificent Seven. I think it's gonna be fun to go back and watch those. So, I was writing this list down of all these Native films I wanted to watch, and I'm like, well, when I geek out on something like that, I really want to learn more about it, hear more about it, I should say. And I feel like I learned a lot about it already. In college, I was a Native American Studies major. I was a double major. That was one of them. And every opportunity I got in one of my Native classes for my NAS classes for my major, I would try to wrap and tie in Native film. Because the first Native American Studies class I took was my freshman fall at Dartmouth. And it was taught by Miss Shauna Goman. And it talked about the entire evolution of Native representation in film from the beginning of film, when we first were able to take pictures. Well, I should say the beginning of media, when we were able to take pictures, still images, and then motion capture with no sound, and recording things with no sound. And then eventually when it became an art and we started evolving, and then it became performance art, and then how it became like the representation of a native, like the romanticized version of a native, like what we want the outsiders to see, as, you know, concurrently the government is putting forth legislation to take their land, to remove these people from their reservations. They wanted to continue to preserve this image of the romanticized native, the noble savage, the native that is connected to nature and that is a fearless warrior, but also a force to be reckoned with, and will steal everything from you if you give them the opportunity. So I think that's a great freaking time in my life. That we watched movies, we read books, we talked about different tropes, we read peer-reviewed articles all about representation in the film industry. And ever since then, changed my life. I view Native film in a different light, and that's what I hope to do with this podcast, is talk about Native film, Native representation. And the other inspiration for this is a documentary I saw, I want to say in 2011, 2012. This documentary was made in 2009 by a Canadian native. His name is Neil Diamond. When I immediately read that, I'm like, Neil Diamond? Are you serious? But it was a different Neil Diamond. He's a Canadian native, and he does the same thing that we did in my Native American Studies class, talks about the evolution of the imagery in film of natives to where it was primarily non-natives telling the story of natives, inaccurately, of course, and misrepresenting them. And it was never natives playing natives. It was always white actors, non-native actors, and they were dressed up with stereotypical imagery, using stereotypical images of natives, putting war paint on, generically making headdresses, not being region specific. Region was way off. You're in Monument Valley, but you're riding a horse and holding a war staff with a war bonnet, and you're just mixing and matching different cultures. And because you casted everybody in Monument Valley, which is in the Southwest, and you're representing all of the clothing, all of the regalia of something that's more akin to culture up north in the plains, you have those individuals speaking Navajo because you're like, hey, we got to keep this thing authentic. And so I think it's pretty cool to see stuff like that, fun stuff like that, to unpack that. So I'd like to look at that, because the film industry went from there, and that documentary talks about that, to where eventually representation got a little more aware, or I should say the film industry got a little more aware of the representation and started to try to make attempts at getting it right. Slowly, examples of that, Squanto, Geronimo, still missing the mark a little bit, I think, but they made better attempts at it. And Legends of the Fall, Thunderheart, where you still have a non-native as the lead in the movie, but having native connections that connects them to native culture, that connects them to their heritage in the movie, and seeing how that representation has changed. But still, the story is not being told by natives, even though now you have natives cast. And then eventually, you get to a point where it's like, hey, natives are finally taking the lead. You have stuff like Windtalkers, where it is a native lead, a native person playing the native lead. While he wasn't a Navajo, Adam Beach is the shit. And seeing Adam Beach on the big screen was great. And the last part of that documentary, they talk about the shift to where we are now, where it is native stories being told by natives from the native perspective, the native experience. And I thought that was a great just documentary that showed the evolution and how it frames our perception. Yeah, you can say, that's non-native people's, that frames their experience. When you show little kids Pocahontas, when you show little kids Indian in the Cupboard, that's their view of who natives are, of what natives do, and that might be the only native that they see, and then they think that we're gone. They think that we're something that should be romanticized and revered as mysterious and mythological and not real and not present and need to be honored, quote unquote, because we don't exist anymore. But shit, when I was a kid, I thought that too. I'm Navajo. I thought I was gone, meaning the native. I thought the native was gone. I'm like, man, Navajos, we don't wear war bonnets. We don't get in teepees. We don't ride horses like that and shoot bow and arrows off top of our horses. I was pretty disappointed. We don't have canoes. We don't have giant drums that we beat. I was pretty disappointed as a kid when I would watch movies, when I'd watch Dances with Wolves, when I would watch old Looney Tunes cartoons and see Pocahontas and watch Indian in the Cupboard. I'm like, I don't own anything that has buckskin. I don't own any furs. I've never been inside of a teepee. Like, what kind of native am I? Like, I'm such a cheap native. I was so mad. But in that documentary, Real Engine that I mentioned, he talked about that because as a Canadian native, he had the same experience. And I thought, like, man, two natives who've never met each other, who never probably will meet each other, completely separate parts of the country, the world, had the same almost just awakening of like, what kind of native am I? Because of their perceptions that were framed by what movies told them natives should be. So that's what this podcast hopes to do, is talk to other natives, talk to other non-natives, just about like, hey, what's your favorite native film? Or let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this native actor. Let's talk about where this movie got it right. Let's talk about where it got it wrong and where we could improve. So the format of this podcast is going to be, every episode is going to be a movie. I will highlight every movie I'm going to do I'm going to create an Instagram page for this podcast, and I'll try to be pretty active on that, update, hey, this is upcoming, maybe if I get guests, which I hope at some point, so-and-so is going to be on the podcast. Please look out for that. And I'm going to review these. I'm going to try to do some research. Some of these movies I know a lot about, and I know way more. Obviously, Wind Talkers, I'm Navajo. It tells the story of code talkers in World War II. I saw that opening day in Flagstaff, Arizona. I saw that multiple times in theaters, even though I didn't have a license. I made my mom drive me multiple times because I'm like, holy crap, there's natives on the freaking big screen. There's and there's a Navajo on the big screen. Charlie Whitehorse is an actual Navajo. Once I saw him, I'm like, that's a Navajo. That's a real Navajo. And I heard Navajo spoken on TV or on a big screen in a theater. And I was just like, man. So obviously I know a lot more about that movie than others, but there are other movies I never got to see a lot of. I never got to see Squanto, Geronimo, Last of the Mohicans, saw the hell out of. I plan to talk about that. Thunderheart, saw the hell out of that movie. Smoke Signals, Skins. These are movies I plan to dedicate a whole episode to. Wind River, that's a recent one. Magnificent Seven, haven't seen it, but I look forward to it. With every single one of these, I'm going to do some research, try to look into the cast. I'm going to pick apart the cast. I'm going to watch the trailers. I'll talk about the trailers. I'll try to post the trailers if I can, or links to the trailers to see, just try to maybe get a glimpse at the imagery that the film was trying to, well, I should say, the people selling the film were trying to sell to the audience to get butts in the seats, to sell tickets to the movie. And it's interesting, one that sticks out to me, Legends of the Fall. Well, on the nose, a native film, because there aren't any native people in the cast, and it's a pretty recent movie. It's a Brad Pitt film with Anthony Hopkins. Still, it's ripe with native symbolism, native representation, albeit poor at times. They do make good attempts, and it's better than other things. It's better than Charles Bronson being Redface. So I think that too, that's something I hope to talk about. Just me personally, just Ian Allison, Navajo, born and raised in Tuba City. I'm just talking about my experience. I don't plan to be talking on the behalf of Native people, but something I also plan to talk about is I wasn't always woke. Yeah, I took that one Native American Studies class, and I was a Native American Studies major in college. I did learn a ton about representation and the different tropes, the recurring tropes in Native film, and the problems with, the romanticized image of Natives, the noble savage, the white savior trope in movies. And some of it does piss me off, and some of it does get me frustrated. But at the same time, I saw Pocahontas when I was like 9. There's still a part of me that really loves that movie, just because you see it when you're 9. That's it. You're done. You see Star Wars Phantom Menace when you're a kid. You're like, man, that movie's still great. And you watch it, and as an adult, you're like, what was I thinking? But you still like it to some degree. There's just some childhood sparkle in your eye that happens when you hear Colors of the Wind. And that was a movie that made a decent attempt at trying to have Native representation, but they just couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't get out of the inertia that the film industry was in. They had 2 Native people in there. The main, Pocahontas, she was voiced by Irene Bedard, prominent Native film actor. Russell Means, very prominent Native figure. He was also in that, but you had the very much like the white savior message in that, and I plan to talk about that one. So that'll be the format. I'll do some research, post some fun facts, talk about fun facts that I am aware of on movies, and we'll go from there. So let's open up with one fun fact. Wind River. I'm sorry. Yeah, so let's do 2 fun facts, actually. One from Wind River, one from Wind Talkers, both starting with Wind. Film, box offices love a Wind, I guess. It's got a good draw, brings butts in the seats. So in Wind River, starring Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, I want to say. The other Olsen. Yeah, so Elizabeth Olsen was the FBI agent that came along. Jeremy Renner was the local ranger, and he was married to a Native, and he had a Native half-daughter that ended up passing away at some point. And there was an instance of MMIW, missing murdered Indigenous women, where someone was taken from a nearby oil field where these guys were working. She ended up dating one of the guys, and got taken. I shouldn't say taken. She was a victim of sexual assault and was going to be taken, or was going to have something worse happen to her, most likely be murdered to try to cover it up. And so she fled for her life. And that person, her name is, give me a second. I'm going to have to look that one up. Martha Chow, I want to say. But the interesting fact about her is she is not Native. Kelsey Chow, I apologize. She plays Natalie Hanson. In 2017, Kelsey Chow, who has Chinese heritage, around the time that this film came out, started saying that she claimed heritage with the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And I think it was because she played a Native in that movie. She was supposed to be from that Native nation that was in the film. She was supposed to be 100% Native in that movie. And she convinced me, there's a lot of facial features that are similar in some Pacific Islander Asian nations with Natives. There's just a lot of similarities at times. And she kind of fit it. They didn't have to lie to me. They didn't have to put makeup on her. They didn't have to put her and dress her up in Native regalia. They just put her in a scene and made her act. And I believed her. And then as it came to be, she tried claiming some Native heritage to add some credibility to the role. The Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation ended up coming out later and saying there is no record of Kelsey Chow having any connection to our people, to having any lineage to our tribe. And yeah, so there's one. So stuff like that. I plan to look that up, talk about that, unpack that, and I'll talk about more about that on the Wind River episode. But here's another one. If you've ever seen Wind Talkers starring Nicolas Cage and Adam Beach. Nicolas Cage is the soldier assigned to guard the code talker, Adam Beach, in this film. Adam Beach plays the protagonist, and it shows how the United States government decided that to win the war and to end up conquering the Axis, they needed to develop an unbreakable code using the Navajo language. And this is a huge story in my community. One, because when it happened, Navajos weren't allowed to talk about it when they came back. I have my great grandfather. He was a code talker, and he wasn't allowed to talk about it. He was sworn to secrecy until the government later had to, or basically allowed them, release the confidentiality. Because in the event that they needed to use the code again, they couldn't allow the Navajos that served in the war to talk about the code and talk about how they use their language to create a code. Because if they needed to use it again, they didn't want that information to be out there. And this is huge because without that code, it could be debated that we would not have won World War II. The United States would not have come out on top in World War II. So there's a lot of pride around that. It's a historical moment for Navajo people. And when Adam Beach was approached to be in that film, and this is something I learned recently, he was in an interview with Kumar Bell. And Kumar brought that movie up. And Adam Beach said when he was approached to play that, he was like, you're going to need to get permission from the Navajo Nation before I consider doing this. And his agents were like, what? Are you serious? And he's like, yeah, I mean, in so many words, he basically understood the significance of playing a native role to that group, that's that significant. And even though you are native, it's not native across the board. Like, native isn't native. There's over 500 individual native nations. And to say that someone that's non-Navajo, yeah, it's close enough, he's Native American, just put him in there. But he went and asked, and they asked somebody. I don't know who they asked. Maybe when I do my research, I can find out who they asked. But they ended up asking somebody from the Navajo Nation, and they said, yeah, Adam Beach can play that role as long as the other main male lead that is a code talker is played by an actual Navajo. And they did that for the role of Charlie Whitehorse. There was an actual Navajo that was cast in that role. So Adam Beach went forward with it. So stuff like that. I like to bring some fun facts because, especially if I have a primarily native audience listening, if you're listening to that episode, chances are you've already seen that multiple times. So I hope to bring an extra layer of knowledge and something cool, maybe that you didn't know before, do immediately. I should say immediately. Some of the movies I plan to do that have native representation. Some are older. Mentioned some of those before. Wind River, Older Than America, Lone Ranger, even some native films that have accurate native representation, like Indian Horse, The Fast Runner, Atchinashawat. I also want to look at native documentaries. So an example of a recent one, the Netflix docuseries Basketball or Nothing, where it looks at how basketball is treated in the community from a Navajo perspective with the Chinle Wildcats. I think it's a great story, great insight into where basketball is, where Navajo land is right now, where these kids' lives are, what it looks like. Another older documentary from 2002 that does the same thing is Chiefs. It's a recanting of kids in Wyoming Indian School. I think it's a great documentary. It's basically Hoop Dreams, but native edition, and I think it's a freaking great doc from back in the day. So, I hope you're interested. I hope that I garnered enough interest that you'll keep listening, that you're like, hey, you know what? Don't know who this Ian guy is, or maybe I know him, and he's gathered, he has my attention, and I'm curious to see what he does next with this. So the last thing before I go, just a few more seconds. Why I'm doing this, honestly, is there was a void that I saw in the podcast world and YouTube. I don't see natives talking about natives in film. I don't see that happening. I just want to see more of that. I want to see us having constructive dialogue about, hey, here's the good stuff that's happening, here's the bad stuff, and also here's the funny stuff, because we find a lot of relief and laughter for natives, and that's evident in our movies where we're accurately represented. We're not the stoic native. We aren't the one who never smiles. We're always laughing. We're always having a good time. We find ways to get through struggle, and I want this to be that. I want this to be positive and uplifting and just a fun podcast where you come and listen to, and you look at the episode list and like, oh, nice. I love that movie, and you get to hear me and other people talk about that film. So I hope it's something that piques your interest, and I look forward to seeing where this journey takes us. See ya.